Title: The Dusk-Bound Twin. Year: 108,333,333. Era: Bloodstone Age. Author: Jeremy Levan. Rise of the Zodiac, Series 2025. Chapter 1. At the edge of the Iron Crescent, a city built into cliffs, where shadows stretched longer than memory, two twins were born beneath a blood-red moon. One vanished in the night. The other, branded Dusk-Bound, was raised in silence. She grew up among watchers and vault-keepers, trained to detect lies and extinguish disorder, but beneath her stoic mask burned a yearning for connection, not command. Each citizen of the Crescent lived behind triple-locked doors, speaking only during sanctioned hours. The cry, to tremble, to ask why these were offenses as grave as treason. But when a storm buried the South District, the cries echoed from beneath rubble. The Dusk-Bound twin broke protocol. She ran. She pulled strangers from collapse, whispering names and cradling their sobs. Chapter 2. Her act of mercy sparked fear. The council summoned her for questioning. Her partner, the Crooked Kindness, an underground empath turned informant, intervened. "I followed her for months," he said. "She doesn't destabilize. She heals." The council scoffed. Emotions are dangerous. They unravel structure. But outside, survivors of the collapse began sharing their pain, not in whispers, but in public. An old baker recounted losing her daughter. A youth admitted to nightmares. A guard laid down his weapon and cried for the first time in 20 years. The city cracked not from rebellion, but from vulnerability. Chapter 3. The council prepared to purge. The Crooked Kindness vanished. The twin was captured. But the night before her execution, something shifted. Hundreds gathered in silence beneath the council tower. They wore no symbols, carried no weapons, only stories. They spoke of grief, love, fear, confusion, and in that space no one was mocked, no one punished. The council stood paralyzed, and the Dusk-Bound twin, freed by her missing sibling who had infiltrated the Watchers decades ago, walked free into the crowd. The Crescent changed, not overnight, but enough, and on the door of the old vault where feelings were once locked away, a message now glows. Love is tested not in calm, but in chaos. Title: The Name Unspoken. Year: 108,205,127.8. Era: Bloodstone Age. Author: Jeremy Levan. Rise of the Zodiac, Series 2025. Chapter 1. In the underground city of Varenhold, where every corner was monitored and an authorized lock that earned you a lifetime of silence, there lived a figure called only the Name Unspoken. He was blamed for everything: graffiti, leaks, uprisings. No one had seen him. Everyone knew him. He didn't exist officially, but his symbol, a D carved in shadow, began appearing near community centers, water lines, and cracked mosaics thought too old to matter. It was there that people began to gather again, and among them, walking quietly with no flame but her own fury, was the Flay, might witness, once a prosecutor for the regime, now its fiercest critic. She found the symbol one night and whispered, "The gate to freedom is carved from the shadow you feared to cross." And then she crossed it. Chapter 2. The regime worked hard to divide. Everyone was given a personal solution file. You didn't need neighbors. You had data. But when water failed, it wasn't the engineers who fixed it. It was the old woman who remembered where pipes ran when rations thinned. It wasn't the officials who saved the hungry. It was the boy who traded soup for stories. The Name Unspoken organized nothing but empowered everything. He left clues, tools, questions. The witness gathered those stories and shared them at illegal vigils, disguised as confessionals. The people didn't rebel. They listened. Then they acted together. Chapter 3. The regime cracked down. Accusations flew. Rest escalated. But for every raid, 10 repairs were made. For every file deleted, 20 truths were shared. At last, the regime declared they had captured the Name Unspoken. The man was dragged onto broadcast, broken, gagged, named. The city went silent. Then someone painted the symbol on the tower wall, and another, until it covered every surface. A Flay, might witness, stepped onto the plaza, looked into the camera, and said, "You can imprison a man, but not a movement." And beneath the plaza gates, now left open for the first time in decades, a line is carved. The gate to freedom is carved from the shadow you feared to cross. Title: The Beast with Human Eyes. Year: 108,076,922.8. Era: Bloodstone Age. Author: Jeremy Levan. Rise of the Zodiac, Series 2025. Chapter 1. Town of Quibblestone had only one law: don't ask questions you don't want answered. Its therapists were replaced by echo chambers, its libraries by shout boxes, and anyone caught feeling excessively was issued a composure muffin and sent home. Into this maelstrom of willful ignorance waddled the beast with human eyes. He looked like a shag rug that had grown so, aware and taken a correspondence course in empathy. No one knew where he came from. He simply sat in the plaza every morning and asked, "How are you really doing?" People fled, except the wound bearer. She arrived carrying a backpack labeled as fine, leaking unresolved grief. "To learn endlessly," said the beast, "is to live mythically." She sat. Chapter 2. They began hosting informal fill-ins. People arrived to whisper fears into jars. Others brought spoons to beat on pots until someone cried. One man confessed he hadn't laughed in 8 years and burst into giggles halfway through saying it. The mayor attempted to outlaw the term emotional authenticity, but accidentally declared war on hugs and was promptly snuggled into resignation. The beast and wound bearer opened the town's first empathy exchange booth. Leave a story, take a tear, or vice versa. Chapter 3. Eventually, a delegation from the Ministry of Emotional Neutrality arrived. They brought charts, concern, and mandatory calm caps. The beast asked them, "Have you ever cried in a dream and woke up laughing?" They short-circuited. The wound bearer planted a tree in the plaza. From it hung masked, sad, angry, confused, all with "try me" tags. Quibblestone transformed. Now, instead of composure muffins, they served catharsis quasas. And in the square, beside the Phelan fountain, a sign reads, "To learn endlessly is to live mythically." The beast still sits there, asking, smiling, listening. Title: The Bone-Lashed Witness. Year: 107,948,717.5. Era: Bloodstone Age. Author: Jeremy Levan. Rise of the Zodiac Series 2025. Chapter 1. The city, orbit of Threx 9 spun, just outside Saturn's breath, wrapped in fields of neon haze and bureaucratic tranquility. Its motto, peace through perfection. Perfection meant efficiency. Efficiency meant silence. Truth had no place in a system that measured worth by output and erased individuals from records the moment they fell below standard deviation. But the bone-lashed witness remembered everything. Scarred by failed compliance therapy and once buried in administrative exile, they returned not to disrupt, but to speak, and in their voice crackled a frequency older than data, deeper than protocol. To speak your truth without apology, they said to the Spiral Keeper, is to become the doorway others forgot they carry it. Chapter 2. The Spiral Keeper was an archivist of anomalies. She gathered myths, jokes, unsanctioned lullabies. Together, they broke into the echo vault where citizen dreams were stored and deleted after 72 hours. They broadcast a single dream. It showed a janitor singing to a dying AI. Teacher dancing through lesson plans were written daily by the state. Child drawing stars on walls never meant to be looked at. It wasn't revolution. It was recognition. The orbit began to tremble. Chapter 3. Counselors issued a system-wide purge. The witness stood at the spire of metrics. The keeper opened every locked archive. No violence. No speeches. Just truths. Letting back. One technician wept as she remembered her mother's voice. A commander dropped his badge and asked for forgiveness. And across Threx 9, voices returned, not loud, but honest. The city did not fall. It opened, and above the echo vault, now renamed the Forum of First Breath, the corridor rings with one message. To speak your truth without apology is to become the doorway others forgot they carried. The witness vanished. The keeper remained, and Threx 9 began to dream again. Title: The Silent Witness. Year: 107,820,512.5. Era: Bloodstone Age. Author: Jeremy Levan. Rise of the Zodiac Series 2025. Chapter 1. In the shadowed glen where the hollow tree guardian once slept, no birds sang, and no roots moved. Time pooled there like stagnant water, thick with secrets unspoken and memories buried too deeply to rot. But one figure still returned. They were known only as the Silent Witness, a figure draped in mourning silks, whose mouth was sewn shut by choice, not force. They came each season, placing their palm upon the bark of the hollow tree, and listening. Each time they heard echoes not of the past, but a future still uncertain. Then, for the first time in 100 years, they broke their silence. When you voice your truth, the witness whispered, others remembered theirs, and the bark began to bleed. Chapter 2. The village of Nereth, nestled beyond the glen, had forgotten its debt. Once protected by the guardian, it had betrayed her in fear, blaming her for the plague she tried to contain. They burned her shrine, exiled her story, and rewrote their history. Now sickness spurred again, and fear returned. But this time, so did the witness. They planted layers beneath doorsteps, transcripts of forgotten confessions, journals lost in fire, lullabies sung by the condemned. At first, people ignored them. Then came the dreams. Children cried out with names they'd never heard. Old men woke speaking truths they'd sworn were lost. Chapter 3. When the mayor denounced the witness as a ghost of vengeance, the people gathered not to purge, but to remember. They walked to the hollow tree in procession, and there stood the silent witness, surrounded by saplings that had not been there the night before. They removed the final stitch from their lips. "I am not here to curse," they said, "but to remind. Your silence is not innocence, but your voice can be redemption." Nerith wept and healed, and beneath the branches of the reborn tree, now blooming with red leaves in ghost light, a carving reads, "When you voice your truth, others remember theirs." Title: The Scribe of Vanishing Things. Year: 107,006. 192,307.2. Era: Bloodstone Age. Author: Jeremy Levan and Rise of the Zodiac, Series 2025. Chapter 1. In the final centuries of the great empire of Yelvara, when monuments still shone but hearts had long dulled, an old scribe tended the archives where history was slowly erased by decree. They called her the Scribe of Vanishing Things not because she destroyed, but because she remembered what others chose to forget. Her companion was the blind healer, once a palace physician who had turned away from medicine when he realized it was being used to extend tyranny rather than save lives. They met in silence and found purpose in grief. Where love is absent, the scribe told him, power decays into domination. He nodded and opened his hands to receive stories. Chapter 2. The court of Yelvara had outlawed emotion in governance. Mercy was weakness, compassion and efficiency. In its place, policy grew cold and tight, but the scribe gathered tales of kindness, smuggled letters, whispered lullabies, the names of those vanished not by death, but by deliberate forgetting. She transcribed them into living scrolls and left them in bakeries, wells, and pockets. The healer, meanwhile, returned to medicine not to cure illness, but to teach empathy. He taught aristocrats to feel each wound they ordered. He asked questions no law could silence. Children began to imitate him. Chapter 3. The Empress issued a proclamation, erased them both. Instead, her guards found scrolls in their own homes, words written by their parents, songs from their youth. They wept, then laid down arms. The scribe stood in the great hall and read the names of every soul erased in the last 100 years. The healer placed a hand on every listener's chest and said, "You remember now. What will you do with it?" The empire did not fall. It softened, and beneath the crumbling statue of the first lawgiver, a new inscription glows in silver. Where love is absent, power decays into domination. And Yelvara remembered how to feel. Title: The Sleepless Midwife. Year: 107,564,001. 102.3. Era: Bloodstone Age. Author: Jeremy Levan and Rise of the Zodiac, Series 2025. Chapter 1. In the quiet corridors beneath the fortress city of Trelaret, where echoes lingered longer than truth and law held the weight of ritualized forgetting, a figure walked without rest. The sleepless midwife. She had delivered thousands, not just lives, but stories. Each birth was followed by silence, each cry stifled before it reached the surface. Once she was a revered healer. Now she was watched. When the injustice of the upper council's decree sent her dearest friend into exile for speaking of buried crimes, the midwife did not protest. She waited, and when the city slept, she sang. "You cannot shift time," she murmured into the shadows, "but you can shape what it sculpts in you." Chapter 2. Her lullabies became legends. Tuned mothers hummed unconsciously, rhythms that made tyrants twitch in their dreams. She stitched truth into blankets. She told children bedtime stories filled with forbidden metaphors, the song woven from wounds. An old friend turned bard returned from the borders and began echoing her truths in taverns, his voice carried into hearts like splinters in stone. One day, a child brought a stitched word to court. Why? It shook the dais. Whispers rose. The council banned lullabies. The midwife did not stop. Chapter 3. They came for her with shackles. She opened her door. She did not resist. In her cell, she told stories, not of vengeance, but of consequence, of kindness misused, of law mislaid. The guards cried. The council hesitated. The people marched not with torches, but with stitched truths wrapped around their shoulders. They did not demand her release. They demanded her voice be heard. And in the halls of judgment, the midwife was asked to speak. She did. Trelaret changed not easily, but permanently. And outside the fortress, carved into the stone beneath the city's foundation, reads, "You cannot shift time, but you can shape what it sculpts in you." Title: The Outcast Flame. Year: 107,435,896.9. Era: Bloodstone Age. Author: Jeremy Levan and Rise of the Zodiac, Series 2025. Chapter 1. In the scorched borderlands between the fractured empires of Thal and Orion, where treaties were etched into ash and peace was a rumor whispered only by the wind, a single traveler carried fire where no one dared. They called her the outcast flame, once a noble, then a prisoner, now merely a Spartan exile. She lit no torches, only minds. Her path crossed with the shepherd of regret, a former commander whose armies once carved boundaries into bone. Now he walked beside the forgotten, guiding the broken with silent penance. They met under the remnants of a shattered monument, neither friend nor foe. "Fear's a doorway," the flame said, "and courage," the shepherd replied, "is the price to pass through." Chapter 2. Together they entered the city of Jorn, a place still split by a wall older than its children. One side hoarded brain and law, the other stories and scars. The flame spoke at the gate, not to accuse, but to invite. She asked both sides to build a fire not for warmth, but for honesty. The shepherd brought bread. It was not trust. It was something more fragile. Hope. The wall remained, but a table was built beside it. Each night more came. Each morning fewer returned to silence. Chapter 3. The governors called it sedition. They summoned guards, issued warnings. The outcast flame stood before them, empty-handed. "I bring no rebellion," she said, "only reflection." They jailed her, but the fire didn't stop. The shepherd read her words aloud at the wall each dusk. Children passed notes between bricks. A baker smuggled songs in flour sacks. When the gates broke, not from force, but fatigue, the people wept, not for victory, but for the time lost. The wall crumbled weeks later, and on its last remaining stone, scorched and singing in the evening breeze, a phrase was carved: "Fear is a doorway, courage is the price to pass through." Title: The Beast with Human Eyes. Year: 107,307,692.1. Era: Bloodstone Age. Author: Jeremy Levan. Rise of the Zodiac Series 2025. Chapter 1. In the mountaintop village of Korth, where fear was stored in jars and laughter taxed by volume, people learned quickly to keep their eyes down and their thoughts quieter, until the day a creature appeared in the central square, large, fuzzy, pink, and gently humming opera. They called it the Beast with Human Eyes. It blinked with the sorrow of ages and offered free hugs, an act punishable by 3 weeks of mandated seriousness. Children loved it. Elders tolerated it. Officials hated it. The village elder sent the town's minister of closure to investigate. But when she asked the creature what it was doing, it responded, "Fear combined, but if you face it, it becomes the gatekeeper of your awakening." She wept. Chapter 2. Soon the beast opened the gate that hungers, a portal carved into a wall near the bakery, pulsing with curiosity. It didn't consume bodies. It consumed assumptions. Walk through it, and your opinion changed because you suddenly saw someone else's. Strict Taylor emerged with a newfound passion for interpretive dance. A baker renounced his no-sprinkles policy. The mayor took a sabbatical to study clouds and paint his dreams. The town changed. So did the beast. It grew smaller, its eyes softer. Chapter 3. A delegation from the outer order of absolute consensus arrived. They tried to seal the gate. They were eaten, but politely. Afterward, the village declared itself a haven of hilarity and perspective. Every week, a new festival honored the fears people had faced and the insights they gained. The beast eventually vanished, leaving behind only a note: "You're doing great. Also, beware of emotional constipation." And above the gate that hungers, still shimmering with potential, a sign reads: "Fear can bind, but if you face it, it becomes the gatekeeper of your awakening." Visitors come often, most stay. Title: The Storm Herald. Year: 107,179,486.6. Europe: Bloodstone Age. Author: Jeremy Levan. Rise of the Zodiac Series 2025. Chapter 1. In the twilight heart of Earthcore, where betrayal was more common than rain and silence bought more than gold, the Storm Herald wore no armor, carried no blade, and commanded nothing. But her name made generals tremble. She had once been a spy for 3 kingdoms until she chose none. Now she moved with winds that whispered revolutions and carried a single mission: uncover truth, uplift the just, and dismantle rot from within. Her companion was a timeless child, a prodigy locked in a repeating cycle of youth by a failed magical rite, whose memory stretched back centuries. To the child, the herald whispered on the eve of an uprising, the gentlest heart, when fierce in love shatters every chain. And so the storm began. Chapter 2. Earthcore's councils had long since collapsed into paranoia, led by shadows who valued loyalty over honesty. The herald infiltrated no vaults. She hosted dinners. She gathered midwives, merchants, Teachers those who knew truth by living it. She did not preach. She asked questions, and slowly the city answered. The timeless child passed stories between rooftop gardens, lessons written in chalk across market stalls. Scribes began transcribing rumors into records. The city's forgotten memories stirred. When a counselor tried to arrest the herald, he found himself surrounded not by guards, but by testimony. Ethical leadership, born not from command but character, had already taken root. Chapter 3. The night of the reckoning came. Storms rolled in. The Spire Council attempted to seize control with fear, but the herald walked calmly to the highest balcony and spoke. Leadership is not forged in silence, it's measured in what you protect when no one is watching. The people stood together. No riot, no war, just withdrawal. From fear, from lies. The councils dissolved. Erithgor rebuilt not under one banner, but many truths, and beneath the lightning struck statue of its new civic square, carved into iron softened by time, reads, "The gentlest heart, when fierce in love, shatters every chain." Title, The False Healer. Year, 107,051,281.8. Era, Bloodstone Age. Author, Jeremy Levan. And Rise of the Zodiac, Series 2025. Chapter 1. The temple city of Rithel was known, not for its splendor, but for its silence. Its gates admitted only the serene. Its halls echoed only with ritual chants. Its laws were etched in pearl and enforced without question. Into this silence came the false healer, once a famed physician, exiled for curing someone the council had chosen to let die. She now wandered with a crooked staff, a cloak of ash, and a tongue too sharp for sacred spaces. When she arrived at Rithel's gates, they denied her. She left a gift, a vial of potion, and a warning. What you destroy in fury will return as a lesson with your name on it. The High Seer laughed. Chapter 2. Illness struck the city weeks later. The High Seer was the first to fall. The healers offered no solutions, only prayers. The false healer returned, not triumphant, but tired. She refused the council's request to cure her. Instead, she set up a table outside the city walls. She listened. The grief, the rage, the stories. The veiled seer, once the council's oracle, now a reluctant rebel, joined her. Together, they welcomed the sick and the broken. Not with cure, with voice. Chapter 3. One by one, people left the temple. They brought their wounds. They brought their words. Soon the old laws cracked. The pearl tablets chattered beneath a new wind, one made of sighs and songs. The High Seer begged forgiveness. The false healer offered only silence. But the people forgave. Rithel changed. Its gates opened. Its chants expanded. Its sacredness now included sorrow, laughter, dissent. And at the threshold of the temple, carved into the stone by a dozen hands, reads, "What you destroy in fury will return as a lesson with your name on it." Now, everyone is heard, even the exiled. Title, The One Who Waits. Year, 106,923,076.3. Era, Bloodstone Age. Author, Jeremy Levan, and Rise of the Zodiac, Series 2025. Chapter 1. In the city of Korib, where towers tilted with secrets and alleys murmured of vanished kings, there was a shadow who moved not with haste, but patience. They called her the One Who Waits, once a spy, once a daughter, now a whisper in corridors thought secure. She was never seen at the center of power, but every turning point bore her handprint. When ministers schemed, she planted hesitation. When generals conspired, she introduced doubt. And when the people forgot how to dream, she sang the songs the grief singer once taught her. Every fork in the road reveals nothing, she said to a recruit, until you choose. Chapter 2. The spire of command grew heavier with pride. The chancellor silenced all dissent by demotion, exile, or quiet disappearance. The One Who Waits gathered none to her side. She elevated others instead. A street artist began painting truth on warehouse walls. A baker delivered coded messages in crusts. A bookseller offered banned text beneath the binding of romances. Each of them believed they acted alone. Each of them changed everything. The grief singer returned, cloaked in ashes, reminding the city that silence is not peace, only a breath before the cry. Chapter 3. When the chancellor moved to declare himself sovereign eternal, the city did not riot. It whispered, and the whispers moved faster than guards. By the time he took the dais, the square was empty. Every citizen had gathered in the hall of echoes, where the One Who Waits stood not above them, but among them. "There is no throne here," she said, "only ground shared by all." The chancellor fled. No one followed, and at the foot of the broken dais, a plaque was placed not in triumph, but in testimony. Every fork in the road reveals nothing until you choose. Korib did not forget again. Title, The Tamer of Impossible Beasts. Year, 106,794,871.6. Era, Bloodstone Age. Author, Jeremy Levan, Rise of the Zodiac, Series 2025. Chapter 1. The war had ended, but the city of Calvin still trembled. Its monuments stood, but hollow. Its leaders walked, but broken. And in the old Colosseum where champions once tamed creatures of legend, weeds now grew between stones thick with blood that refused to vanish. Among the ruins came the tamer of impossible beasts. Not a soldier, not a hero. A woman once imprisoned for releasing the very beasts others fought to conquer. She returned not with chains, but with lullabies. One morning she found the gate to the beast pen still sealed shut, yet something stirred beyond. The world does not need dominion, she whispered, but forgiveness. And the beast listened. Chapter 2. In the archives of Calvin, records of war had been edited into glory. The tamer sought the originals. The inner child's echo, a former battlefield bird-turned quiet recluse, brought her memory where paper could not. Together they began to retell the stories, not with blame, with depth, with pain, with healing. They walked the city sharing names of the fallen, not only the honored, but the forgotten. They spoke of kindness shown in trenches of fear met with trembling hands that still reached. And slowly Calvin listened. Chapter 3. The Chancellor condemned them. Forgiveness weakens resolve, he declared. But the people asked, what strength comes from forgetting how we broke? They gathered in the Colosseum. The beasts once called monsters entered peacefully. Children climbed their backs. Elders wept. The tamer knelt beside the Chancellor, offering not vengeance, but a mirror. Forgiveness melts the chains of the soul that forged them. He stepped down. Calvin became a city of memory and mercy, and on the gate once used to cage beasts, a single line was etched into bronze. Forgiveness melts the chains of the soul that forged them, and no chains have returned since.